In 1848, a French artist named Frédéric Soriot imagined a world free of absolute monarchs. He pictured a diverse crowd marching together, leaving the broken crowns and institutions of kings scattered in the dirt behind them. But in the mid-19th century, this democratic march toward liberty was a fantasy. The concept of a nation-state, a place where citizens shared a common culture, history, and identity, didn't exist yet. Instead, the continent was dominated by sprawling, disjointed empires. Look at the borders of the Habsburg or Ottoman territories. These were massive land grabs drawn by monarchs, forcing completely mismatched cultures and languages to live under a single ruler. Before anyone could draw the borders of a physical country on a map, the idea of a shared national identity had to be planted in the minds of the people. The initial spark came from France. The 1789 revolution stripped power from the monarchy and handed it to common citizens. As Napoleon's armies swept across Europe, they brought a taste of equal rights and liberty to populations that had only ever known absolute rule. By 1815, Napoleon was defeated at Waterloo. Immediately, the victorious powers, Russia, Prussia, Austria, and Britain, moved to undo his democratic reforms by signing the Treaty of Vienna. They restored the old royal families, reinstated rigid social hierarchies, and imposed heavy censorship to silence any talk of liberty. They intended to return Europe to its pre-revolutionary state. This heavy-handed oppression triggered a reaction. Middle-class liberals, shut out of politics, went underground. Revolutionaries like the Italian Giuseppe Mazzini formed secret societies to plot against the autocrats in the shadows. By attempting to crush physical revolutions with censorship and police, the monarchs forced the idea of nationalism underground. They had turned a political movement into a resilient, clandestine weapon. The early fight for these new nations didn't start with armies. It started with a cultural movement called Romanticism, which focused on folklore, music, and shared emotions to build a sense of unity from the ground up. Take Poland. The physical country had been wiped off the map, partitioned and occupied by Russia. When the Russians banned the Polish language in schools, the citizens kept speaking it anyway, using their native tongue as an act of defiance to keep their national spirit alive. These swelling cultural sentiments eventually spilled out into the streets, triggering a wave of uprisings from 1830 to 1848. In Greece, this shared cultural pride fueled a successful war for independence against the Ottoman Empire. Artists actively stoked this devotion. They began personifying their new countries as proud female allegorical figures, like Marianne in France or Germanian in Germany, giving the public a physical symbol to rally behind. While Romanticism successfully united the minds of the people, songs and statues were rarely enough to defeat massive, entrenched empires. Actually redrawing the map of Europe would require military pragmatism. The idealistic middle class tried to negotiate their way to democracy. In 1848, German liberals drafted a constitution and asked the King of Prussia to accept it. He rejected the proposal and called out his troops to dissolve the assembly. The torch then passed to a new breed of ruthless diplomats. The unification of the German states was ultimately secured through the calculated strategy of Prussia's chief minister, Otto von Bismarck. Bismarck executed a policy of blood and iron. He mobilized the highly disciplined Prussian military to fight 3 aggressive wars against Denmark, Austria, and France over 7 years. The resulting victories forged a single German empire. To the south, the fragmented Italian peninsula followed a similar path. Chief Minister Count Cavour handled the diplomatic alliances, while revolutionary military commanders like Giuseppe Garibaldi led volunteer armies to secure the southern territories. By 1861, those military campaigns culminated in the crowning of a single monarch, King Victor Emmanuel II, ruling over a newly unified Italy. By the late 19th century, the utopian dream of independent countries had materialized. It was achieved through aggressive force and shrewd diplomacy, leaving Europe geographically defined by powerful, centralized military states. Once these new nations consolidated their power, their internal pride mutated. Having secured their own borders, these powerful states developed an aggressive greed to conquer and dominate weaker regions. The danger of this shift is visible in the Balkans. As the Ottoman Empire slowly collapsed, its receding control left a massive power vacuum in southeastern Europe, leaving behind a cluster of newly independent smaller states. Driven by extreme nationalistic jealousy, these newly freed Balkan nations spent their first years of independence clashing over every mile of territory, each attempting to maximize their own borders at the expense of their neighbors. Russia, Germany, Britain, and France all jumped into these local conflicts to check their rivals' power. Each superpower brought its own global military weight to the region, turning local land disputes into a network of high-stakes imperial alliances. The intervention of these global empires meant that a single spark in the Balkans would no longer stay local. It would pull the entire European alliance system into a single massive collision. In 1914, that collision began, triggering the First World War. The innocent, utopian dreams of the 1840s of diverse people marching together in harmony had dissolved into mechanized slaughter.